with these words today, blogged on the Huffington Post, quote, "It's true, I use cannabis." Los Angeles City Councilman Bill Rosendahl became the first sitting elected official in the United States to write openly of his medical marijuana use while in office. As states, cities, and the federal government all consider how to deal with the increasing acceptance of marijuana use for medical and recreational purposes, Rosendahl's coming out of the cannabis closet to help further the cause, and he joins me on set here in Los Angeles to talk about his decision. Welcome to HuffPost Live.
It's good to be on your show.
Thanks, and it's good to have you here after watching your show here in LA for so many years. First, I got to ask, just generally, how is your health? How are you doing?
Well, I'm in remission. That's the good news. And it really came about from the medical use of marijuana. When my physician, my oncologist, urged me to take it instead of the high-end drugs, which would get you high for a second, and then you would crash.
Yeah.
It's all about pain. It's all about managing pain. And the particular cancer I have in that ureter, in that tube, came about from one of the diabetic pills I was taking called Actos. So the first thing I want to tell people out there, they're taking Actos for their diabetes, stop it, and stop it now, because it is, in fact, been implicated in this. So I was told I had stage 4 cancer. Just take some high-end drugs and die. Well, it would have meant I would have missed the November election. And you're looking at a political animal. And that was enough of a motivation for me to say, wait a minute now, we're going to work on this and see where we can take it.
I want to read another bit from your piece, and we'll put it up on the screen for everybody to see. You write on the effects of your pot use, quote, "I'm seeing dramatic improvements in my health. I'm walking without the stinging pain in my feet from neuropathy. I'm walking more freely and faster without assistance. I can sit longer than 5 minutes without pain. I'm getting pretty close to feeling like the old Bill Rosendahl." Do you really attribute all of this to using medical marijuana?
Yes. Yes, and that's the amazing thing. I knew it gave you a high. I knew it happened with my neuropathy. But to get the physical changes in my body, first I could turn to the right, then I could turn to the left, then I could get up. Now, anybody who has cancer and is lying in one of these states will tell you just to move around is critical. You end up with boils on your backside. It gets very ugly and very depressing, and you basically want to die. So what happened to me was, A, the pain lessened. 2, I was able to get some real sleep, like 6 hours. And last night, frankly, even though there was an election and all that, I went to bed and got 8 hours sleep.
Good for you.
And then I got to see afterwards who won and who didn't. I did go live on ABC radio from 8 to 9, then I went home and did that. But to get to sleep and to have pain-free is a direct result of medical marijuana.
Let's take a look at this picture on my computer screen, everybody, so you can see this is a picture of Bill from the Los Angeles Times. And clearly here you're walking through, is this your dispensary, the place where you go get your marijuana?
Well, it's the first time I'd been in that store.
Okay.
And frankly, I did it on my own. I went with a walker. I went over it. You know, they got all these crazy names for the different stuff. Yeah. I want to know why this is this, why is this that, and how do you keep it clean and pure? The biggest thing on marijuana, besides its medicinal use, is the quality of it. And if it's checked and it's approved and it's quality, then it's worth taking. And those two groups had qualified themselves, and they came to my aid. And when that article was done, it went all over the world.
It did.
Because truly, I am probably in the United States of America the most powerful local official who's admitting that medical marijuana has literally saved my life.
You represent, what, 275,000 people in CD11, your council
district?
Yeah.
But, you know, there's 4 million of us in the city, and we're a multiplier effect of a huge megalopolis region.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, of these 275,000 people, your constituents, what do people say to you when, this is a big deal that you've come out of the, as you say, the cannabis closet and say, as a sitting elected official, you decided to use marijuana. What do people say to you?
Hundreds of people have called me, written me, or have stopped me on the street or in the new media technology, have contacted me from all over the world, literally, saying the following. 1, because of you, I'm now using medical marijuana and it's helping me. Or I have been using medical marijuana, and it's good to see somebody validate the fact that there are medicinal reasons and that you are an example of the medicinal reasons.
How in the article you say you use you make your own butter, you make your own marijuana butter. Tell me about how you take the marijuana. Is it just through the butter? Do you smoke it? What other ways do you?
I do 3 or 4 things. The butter is my favorite. And they now have a blender that puts the proper ingredients together to make the butter. I prefer the butter on bread, toast, and let it melt in. And so it's soft and easy to eat. That is one of my preferences. Another is a cream that goes on the foot, and it's massaged into the foot and goes up your system. So your feet, which are normally cold, cancer survivors are cold all the time. And so that goes into the system through the feet. I have a little glycerin pill that goes under the tongue at night that I put under the tongue as the last effort before I go to sleep at night. Those are the basic things. Then I have a vaporizer, which I paid $550 for.
Not cheap.
Nothing for nothing for me. And that also strains out and turns it into a vapor, which is also very effective. And so the combination of those and edibles, a brownie, but not a sugar brownie because I'm a diabetic, and other forms of edibles like that, cookies I've gotten from them. And so eating something goes into the whole system. It's not just a head high, it's a body high, which is key for the cancer recovery.
Obviously, first and foremost, your cancer has affected your ability to serve on the city council, and you stepped away for a little while. But, now that you're using medical marijuana and you're back, you were chairing a transportation committee hearing just recently. What, do you feel like it affects your work that you're able to do?
Well, know this, that I announced publicly that I was retiring because I didn't want to be a burden on the taxpayers. It's as simple as that. And cancer, especially stage 4, at the level I was at, required more focus.
Right.
So I focused for 6 or 8 months. I was delirious on my cancer. In fact, I hurt myself with the IRS. I had an annuity sitting there for 13 years that was due March of 2013, $1,000 a month for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I had to cash that in for my mere survival, to put people around me and support around me. Now when you're in remission, what that means is you've got a chronic, manageable illness. So going forward, it means I will have to have a walker near the edge. I have to have people nearby in case I need some help. God forbid you don't want to fall backwards or forwards, bust your hip. All these issues have to do with being a senior. And frankly, what you want to do is stay as strong and as vigorous and as healthy as you can be.
But I got to tell you, Bill, for somebody who, pardon me, Councilman, I should say, Bill and I have known each other for a very long time. You seem great. Do you feel, just in terms of your stamina, day to day, how do you feel?
Every day I get stronger because I get my self-confidence. It's an awful thing to be what I am, a control freak and a perfectionist on both levels. I've been that way. All of a sudden, I can't control everything. I have to delegate or empower others. And that's very hard for a personality that's an A personality, used to calling all the shots for everything and everybody. So a bit of humility seeps into your being, and you have to rely on other people. That's the most dramatic shift. But I need to have a system in place. So I had 10 combo hits of chemotherapy after I had the 13 hits of radiation.
Wow.
And my oncologist, she would mix other ingredients with it, like an anti-nausea drug, another drug for your tongue that takes away the bitterness that your tongue has. And as we were going through this, the marijuana just turned out to be the only thing that worked, and that brought me back from death's door. And here I lost that $100,000. I owe the government $50,000 in taxes now. And I'm saying, my God, can't they see the reality of healthcare issues? We don't invest enough in healthcare, education, and infrastructure in this country, and we got to start doing that now.
And is any of this covered by insurance, your medical marijuana use at all?
Not the medical marijuana. I'm putting it in there. We'll see what they'll do or not do. But for me, it's my survival that's most important.
Of course.
And it's a minimal amount of cost. The real costs are the obvious hospitalization costs or the different bills for different things, therapies you do have. It's a tremendous amount of cost. That's why we need health care for all Americans. But it shouldn't be through insurance companies, frankly, because they get 30 cents on every dollar. Take the middle person out and let it be a direct relationship between the taxpayer and the doctor.
Were you worried at all as a sitting elected official to openly admit to using marijuana that, the LAPD and whatever, California Highway Patrol sheriffs, they're not coming after really small users, but Obama's Department of Justice and the DEA are shutting down dispensaries. Were you worried at all they were going to come after you?
No, because I want to be an example to people that you don't mess with folks who are doing medical marijuana. It's insane when they go there. Now, let me tell you about Obama. First, he kind of acknowledged medical marijuana, kind of giggled about it, and helped create all these illegal ones that came up in our city. I mean, the Mexican mafia jumped in, the Armenian mafia jumped in, and the Russian mafia jumped in. That's because he made some form of encouragement. Right. Then he withdrew the encouragement, and then he made, or Billy Clinton when he was president, he said, ha, 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 about inhaling. Well, look at the tens of thousands of young kids whose lives he destroyed when he made a stupid comment. Or even when Clinton said, don't ask, don't tell. Well, he wants gay people to lie? Right. I happen to be an openly gay. So with Obama, he came in with all the right energy. Then he turned around and I feel betrayed me on every step of the way.
I want to show another piece from your article and read a little bit more from that. Let's talk about what happened yesterday in Los Angeles. Voters approved in Los Angeles Proposition D would limit the amount of dispensaries in the city only to 135. So you write in your post, quote, there is a real need for alternatives to the powerful and highly addictive pain medications currently on the market. Right. Medical marijuana is that alternative, and cities are making tough policy decisions that are only making the situation for patients even more problematic. So do you think the voters made the wrong decision yesterday in limiting the amount of dispensaries in the city?
I was big on pushing Measure D because that takes the chaos and the confusion and the insanity out of the situation. I would rather see Colorado and the state of Washington work on these details so the rest of the nation can see it. I would love for Kamala Harris, the Secretary of the State,
Attorney General,
Attorney General, to basically say, here is the mechanisms we will use to do it. So we need to have some patience on the overall legalization. But in the meantime, the medical use is as critical as my survival is to me.
Here's another one. You're doing this for several reasons, but in your piece, you outline and you want to encourage other elected officials to do the same thing that you're doing.
That's right.
So here's what you write. You say, as the first elected official in the United States to openly use medical cannabis and belong to a collective in West Los Angeles, this coming out of the cannabis closet is a moment for me to encourage others to openly share their amazing success stories. So how many other, Bill, sitting elected officials do you know that are using marijuana, but they're not talking about it?
Well, frankly, I don't play around on that level of stuff. I don't whisper to politicians. I'm a straight shooter. I tell you how I feel on things.
But do you think there are other, there must be other elected officials using marijuana.
One would imagine that marijuana, if you grew up in the 60s, or if you experienced AIDS in the 70s and the 80s, you know about marijuana. I'm not saying you necessarily participated in it. But for me, the irony is alcohol, which causes domestic violence and car wrecks constantly, is legal, but yet marijuana is illegal. It makes no sense at all. It's stupidity. So what they need to do, those folks who are the alcoholics, it's the same concept for the marijuana user. These people grew up on it. Many of them have no problems with it. It causes no problems for them. So why are you, the alcoholic, saying that the pothead can't be a pothead? I mean, these issues are going to be worked out over time. I see the energy building. I see both what's happening in Colorado and Washington as a backdrop for that. I see the whole world discussing it differently, just like they're discussing gay rights differently in this new day than they did when I was growing up.
Let me bring in some people that want to chat with you and some great experts.
Sure.
Joining us now in our Google Hangout are two people who have worked hard to fight against the war on drugs in this country. Amanda Riemann, a policy manager at the Drug Policy Alliance in San Francisco, and Sanho Tree is joining us again on HuffPost Live, director of the Drug Policy Project at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. So welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Sanho, let me start with you. You've heard what the councilman has to say. Why don't we hear more elected officials coming out of the cannabis closet, as it were, like Councilman Rosendahl?
Well, I think it's very courageous what Councilman Rosendahl has done, and I think we will see more coming out eventually. Historically, this has been kind of a third-rail political issue, but times are changing. And if you say that demographics are destiny, As we've seen on immigration, as we've seen on gay rights, tide is turning, and it's turning very, very quickly.
I think that's a great. Sorry, go ahead, Sano.
No, I think, our politicians very often, especially those in Congress, have very reptilian brains. That is to say, they stay away. They learned their lessons very often in the 80s and the 90s when they thought this was a dead-end issue. Don't go near it. But they don't realize, because they have busy lives, that the world changed. Go for it. A new generation of voters is coming in. And a lot of the older voters that were more involved in the culture war issues that dogged our politics for so many decades are, shall we say, fading in the rearview mirror of our politics.
And that can only be a good thing as far as this is concerned, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's all good what he's saying.
Here's another comment that's come in live from Nikon, who's a frequent commenter on our segments, particularly about cannabis. He says, ask Bill if today's marijuana is really that much stronger than it was, quote, back in the day, and if so, if that makes it, quote, more dangerous, which is what we hear a lot from anti-marijuana people.
It doesn't make it more dangerous, but yet it's a higher quality marijuana. It doesn't have the mold in it. It's gone through processes of change and growth, right. And so it's a more potent bud or a more potent cream or butter. Yes, it is. That's good, because you avoid all of the past history of this, and it's dealt now from a more purified standpoint. Yes.
Los Angeles also elected a new mayor yesterday, and when I had Mayor-elect Garcetti on our show during the campaign, he talked about you as being instrumental to his formation of his policy positions on marijuana. I want to show that clip real quick. You said you have supported the federal reclassification of marijuana. Do you personally want to see marijuana legal for recreational use in California?
I'll respect the voters on that. I'm kind of ambivalent about whether it should personally be legal. But if folks want to do that, it would be fine for recreational use. But I do believe in the shorter term, the federal government should reclassify so that this is not an illegal drug for medical purposes. I know a ton of people who are, very sick patients, even colleagues of mine, for instance, Bill Rosendahl, who's been fighting cancer, one of my colleagues on the city council. I talked to his doctor, who talked about that he wouldn't be able to become, keeping down food if it wasn't for the use of medical marijuana. So I think the federal government should do that swiftly and some of that hypocrisy on the use of marijuana as a medicine.
So how important is it to have a pro-marijuana mayor of the second largest city in the country?
Well, I just think it's fantastic. And I want to say to Eric, even though I supported his opponent, I wish him nothing but the best success. He's an incredibly bright guy. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's been all over the world, and we're blessed to have him as our mayor. And since he's the Renaissance man, I expect a lot of aspects out of him to go forward. But yes, he did use me as an example. Frankly, the whole council, when they realized that if they were going to get rid of every pot shop, or in my case, a medical marijuana clinic, that their colleague Rosendahl, who would be thrown under the bus. And they looked at me and they said, do we want to do this to Bill? And they realized I'm not playing games here. It's my life I'm dealing with here. And it matters, obviously, to me. So the dynamic changed in the room right then and there, and that's when we felt the energy go the other way. And then those two clinics came up and said, we want to help the councilmen use the marijuana appropriately and properly. That's when I toured the Herbal Medical and went with the LA Times. I have no secrets from anybody on anything I do.
Right.
In fact, my whole life is an open book. When Ariana first came on my show, where she got her start on all this, she started to evolve into the spirit she is today. I'll never forget, one day we're walking down, she says, Bill, hold on to me. They know you, but they don't know me. Well, now she's a worldwide figure, but that's because she had purpose and she had positive energy and she wanted to affect social change. We are always seeing change. It's a matter of how we do it.
And just so everybody knows, Bill, before he was city councilman, had a legendary public affairs program on cable here in Southern California. Every politician that wanted to be on any level of office in Los Angeles and California, for that matter, even Vice President Al Gore came on your program, would go and sit down with Bill on your program, on your cable network. Let me get Amanda in here. Amanda, what do you think the impact of Councilman Rosendahl's coming out of the cannabis closet will be nationwide?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense for individuals that are finding relief from cannabis to talk about it. One of the things we find is that people oppose medical cannabis until they know someone that's benefiting from it. Right. And as Councilman Rosendahl said, once you know someone that's benefiting from this, it's really hard to imagine them going to jail or not being able to access what gives them relief. So the more people that can be open and honest about how they use cannabis, the better.
I think, again, well said. I want to show a clip of something that Bill mentioned earlier in the segment. In 1992, at a candidate forum, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton famously addressed his marijuana use. Let's watch this.
And when I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
It's unbelievable to look back on that moment. Sanho and Amanda, you know, if we still have elected officials that are afraid to talk about their cannabis use, very few people will speak out. At this point, nobody else is speaking out like you are, Councilman. Have we really come that far?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that we're having these conversations, you know, the fact that I can turn on the TV and see the Lieutenant Governor of California on Late Night with Carson Daly talking about how marijuana should be legal shows me that we've come a very long way. The fact that this is a part of the conversation, the fact that this is showing up in newspapers and showing up on news programs and showing up in city council meetings is so much further than before when we wouldn't even mention this word.
Sanho, what do you think? Sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
Well, I was just going to liken it to, to other social movements like LGBT rights, where the conversation really started when we started having the conversation.
Sanho, what about you? Let me play the devil's advocate. Yes, we've come a long way, but at the end of the day, you know, policies are changing, but they're changing slowly, and a lot of people are still afraid, I think, to embrace. I guess Obama wrote about it in his books, but it's not like a lot of politicians are really embracing their use. There aren't a lot of politicians who are, quote unquote, out of the cannabis closet while sitting in office.
Well, in fact, that's the last demographic that's going to flip on this issue. It's a question of demographics. We're reaching a tipping point demographically where we can't even find a major candidate for office who can claim to have been drug-free their entire lives. I think the drug warriors are right in the sense that marijuana is a gateway drug. It's a gateway to the Oval Office. So every one of our presidents since 1993 has violated our drug laws in very serious ways. Even our right-wing presidential, Sarah Palin, they've all smoked, they've all inhaled, and they enjoyed it. And so, asked, would a good jail term have been good for them and their lives and their careers? Did they require getting arrested and being sentenced into a mandatory drug court to get their lives in order? And if not, then why is it so good for everyone else, particularly poor people? It's a real issue because these are the people who are now voting on our drug laws. And, they're afraid to sound soft or to send the wrong message to kids. But if they continue with marijuana prohibition, what message are they really sending to kids? Don't get caught. It's better if you're white or privileged. That's a terrible message.
Right, and that's a fantastic point. And even though there was a tiny bit, Sam, we could hear you, but there was a tiny bit of audio pop. I want to just reiterate. You talked about Newt Gingrich using marijuana. You talked about politicians saying, you bet I did and I enjoyed it. Famously, Mike Bloomberg said that as he was running for mayor of New York City in 2000. You want to react to any of that?
Well, part of my absolute anger is that gang capital of the world is Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Why is it the gang capital? Because territory by gang members is divided up in the sales of drugs. And they put the scribble on the wall, don't mess in my neighborhood. I have unfortunately seen more than my share of deaths of young men shot from other young men over territory. The gangs get their money from the illegal drug solicitation. That's why we're the drug capital of the world. You want to get rid of gangs, you legalize the drugs and deal with it from medicinal / behavioral ways, just like you should do with alcohol. Okay? And then it takes that out of it, and those young people will no longer have territory, fight with each other and kill each other. These mafioso groups, which control the process, work with certain police who believe in this, would no longer have a job going forward. Those are the kind of jobs I want to get rid of. I want to get kids out of jail, too. But the only way you can do that is deal with the long-range issue of marijuana.
It seems extraordinarily logical, and that's why it's such a shame that we haven't seen it, on a large scale. But I agree with all of you that I feel like, that the tide is turning, and it is. As Sano says, it's an issue of demographics. As we wind down here, I do want to say thanks to Amanda and to Sanho for joining. And I want to ask the councilman about a couple other things, a little bit off topic. But thanks to both of you for jumping in. I really appreciate it. And of course, we'll be seeing you again on future segments. Thanks so much.
Nice meeting you both. Thank you.
Councilman, you were big time on Proposition C here in Los Angeles. Proposition C was the voters of Los Angeles by, I think, 75, 76% margin, instructing the city council, the mayor, the city government, the state government to stand opposed to Citizens United on the decision of the Supreme Court to allow unlimited corporate spending in elections. What's your take on the voters passing this by such a wide margin?
Well, what the voters basically did, and my phone is ringing.
Oh, no worries.
Live television. I'll just turn it off like that. Tell me again what you were just saying.
Yeah, sure. So again, the voters by such a wide margin said they want the city council, they want the state government to stand opposed to Citizens United and unlimited corporate spending.
Yeah, well, here's the bottom line. Money runs politics in America. We got to take money out of politics. For a corporation to have the same rights as a human being is totally insane. And you talk about corruption. We are in the most corrupt financial stage of our democracy in the history of our great country. It is absolutely over the top. If I had my druthers, all money would come out of politics, and the taxpayer would pay for the government that they get. You cannot have independent expenditures. You can't have special gigs and games. You can't have corporations manipulating and dominating. You can't have labor unions. Nobody. Let the people decide. Then the media will do its programs. People will say, well, Bill, you did this television show. You had everybody on. Why? Because I let people finish their sentences and their thoughts. So what you have to do is get the airwaves back. That's part of the FCC. People own the airwaves, okay? And so in the 80s, they took it away from the people. Because the people own the airwaves, the airwaves being used by broadcasters and cablecasters were to give back public affairs programming as their give back for using the public airwaves, which was not to have commercials and not to make money. They were there as a service for using the people's airwaves. Well, they quickly turned that in the 80s and twisted that. So no, you don't have to do anything, and you don't have to do any news. You can just do soundbite journalism, bleed if it leads, whatever gives you the biggest dramatic audience at a given time, and go right to that commercial break. So people don't know anything about anything. And the democracy needs information as a baseline in its process. So I'm very upset.
And I think rightly so. And, as I said earlier, your program is a model, I think, for some of what we do here, to be able to have those long conversations, to be able to let people, as you said, finish their sentences. Again, it's so admirable to see everything that you're doing and the strength that you have, despite the circumstances. Everybody wants to know what's next for you. What are you going to do next as you didn't have to, but you're going to step down from the city council. What are you going to be up to?
Well, I stepped down from the city council because the cancer was overwhelming.
Right.
And I'll probably go out on a medical discharge because of the reality I publicly had to say. I can't do it anymore as much as I want to, and I love it. So there's an issue of my departure from the government and how I do it. But what is your question?
What's next for you? What are you going to do next?
Well, we'll see. First, we're taking money out of politics. That makes it a lot more refreshing. I have been in conversations with potentially doing a show again. But I see myself as a facilitator of the discussion, not coming in with an opinion. Trouble with half these people on television is they get full of themselves, and so they begin to become pundits when they don't even know what they're punditing about. Better yet, that they have something to say. Now Bill Maher's closest to the best that there is. And the heavy-set guy that wears the hat all the time and the glasses?
Who's the heavy
Michael
set guy?
Moore.
Yeah, Michael Moore, of course.
Okay, Michael Moore is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this guy. He gets right out there.
Both of them have been guests on this program on HuffPost Live, too.
You got some good guests.
Let me tell you something. It's an honor to sit here with you. I'm so happy to see you here and to have you on this program. And I think it's inspirational that you're stepping out like this as a sitting elected official and telling people how you're using medical marijuana. So thank you for being here, and come back, please.
It's my privilege and my pleasure, and I want to thank everybody out there who's been watching me and seeing this program.
Now, don't forget to pick up that phone. Everybody stick around.
And God bless you, and bye-bye.
That's how we always used to end this program. And to all of you, thanks for watching. Stick around. We got more HuffPost Live coming up. The conversation continues, as always.